He's Henry Gomez, an ad agency strategist with 29 years of experience.
And he's Howard Eibach, a former copywriter and creative director and the author of 2 books on the creative brief. Together, we're the Brief Brothers. We love talking about advertising, creative briefs, and briefing.
All right, we're back with another episode of the Brief Brothers. I'm flying solo today. Henry is out doing some important new business work. And today we have as our guest an old friend who hasn't been here in quite a while, so we're excited to have him back. Chaz Wigley, calling all the way in from London, or at least the UK. Are you in London, Charles, or are you nearby?
I'm in the middle of the countryside at the moment.
Okay, but you're in the UK,
A very
across
damp,
the
rainy British countryside.
Okay. Well, you're across the pond from us, rejoining us after I don't know how many years. It's been quite a few. So, Charles, welcome back to the Brief Brothers. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Had. It's great to be here.
We want to talk about a couple of things, especially your new book, which I gather is out this month. Is that true?
That's right. I'm kind of hoiking a book around. It's out at the end, final week on Amazon. I think it comes out on the 25th or the 26th of June.
Okay, and this book is based on or inspired by, or is the actual Chaz's 100 Things a Planner Should Know. Did I get that right?
You got that absolutely right, Howard. It came out originally as a post, and if people are feeling especially mean, they can just still download the free PDF. So feel free to do that. I'm not after their cash too much, but if they want a very humorously illustrated book by an artist friend of mine, Martin Galton, then for the price of, I don't know, 2 coffees at Starbucks, 1 pint in an expensive London pub, they can get their very own book version of it.
Well, I, for one, encourage people to buy the book because the artwork is charming, and I think it's an interesting compliment to your work. But before we get into your new book, I want to reintroduce you to our audience. I know many people know who you are. Give us a very brief background of your career to where you are today.
Sure. I mean, I started back in the late 80s in London. So that's giving my age away almost immediately, straight out of college, as a trainee at BBH, Bartle Hegarty, which I think many of your viewers in America will know. It started in London, that company. And as a trainee, I was involved in rushing around the building, desperately getting signatures for things and buying trade media plans and all the usual stuff that you do. But it was a brilliant training course. Did 5 years there, then felt the need to go abroad, ended up traveling around Asia for a year, and then ended up actually working in Asia Australasia and Asia for the next 30 years. So worked for a while in Hong Kong for Bates Group, as was, no more, I suspect now. Then went down to Australia, ended up being a partner of a little agency called Principles, which is still there, still doing very well, the design group. And then rejoined BBH again in, I think, 2001, something like that. But this time in Singapore, not London, because they'd expanded. And the first office they'd opened abroad was in Singapore. And they asked me to go up there to be planning director, which was, great fun. We were 30 people. And then over time, I kind of ended up doing more and more management, ended up as chairman of that office. And then as we grew our offices across the region, ended up as chairman of the region, which was basically just essentially herding cats, Howard. It's a management role. Herding cats don't really want to go. You just have to guide them broadly. But I guess my real job in all of that was being a kind of senior strategist for the big clients across the region. So that's what I ended up doing. Decided to move back to the UK, coming full circle 4.5 years ago. And ever since I've been consulting with my own hugely unimaginatively named outfit, Chaz Wigley Brand Consulting, which is going well. And I'm involved in a couple of other ventures. Another one with another senior planner called Plan B Planning, not to be confused with the rapper or the fertility treatment or the anti-fertility. Somebody told us this after we'd registered that name. But it was too late. Again, my naming prowess is not good. And I'm also involved as essentially the planning department with a kind of a creative group called, this time very humbly, Super Talent, which is basically 16 of the UK's kind of best known creatives and me and another planner and an account guy. And we are just very recently come together. So we'll see where we go with that.
Well, that prompts a question that I hadn't anticipated asking, but I think
Yeah, sure.
it's out there. And I think I am acquainted with a number of creatives and some planners out here in the US who are doing exactly what you've just described as this, what was the name of super talented?
Super Talent. That's right.
Super
So
talent.
it's
This virtual, it's like a virtual agency, right?
a virtual agency. Everybody knows each other though. Creatively led. I mean, what we say to clients is that 70% of all their fees go into the creative end product. It's not got layers of producers and account people and all of that. And it's very much focused on sorting out core brand story, coming up with innovative ideas, almost kind of the tip of the spear, as it were.
Right.
What are you going to be doing there?
Uh,
In brand
that's,
work, not necessarily ads, but it could be product design. We've got two great designers, including one product designer. Might be advertising, might not. It's whatever is the best solution for the brand.
I think this is going to lead or connect to what I wanted to talk to you about regarding your book, because
Okay.
what I'm seeing
Okay.
here is an example of what I'm seeing more and more over here on this side of the pond, which is senior level creatives and planners and account folks who have seen a terminal situation in the large
Yeah.
agencies, which, because the agencies are ageist, as we all know, banding
Yeah.
together and creating their own concerns. I mean, this is not a surprise. This is nothing new, but it's
No.
fascinating that I'm hearing more and more of it. Is is do you see this as a trend, or is there more of this happening?
Yeah. I think inevitably there will be. I think the one difference from the past is it's not people in their late 30s, which is that classic moment when they feel senior and experienced enough to start their own agency and they've got the client con. This tends to be people in their 40s and their 50s that are doing
Right,
this. So
right.
it is an older group. It's a super senior older group. And you're right. I know there's a few of these in the US as well. So I think that's the new aspect to it. What was your second question there, Howard? Sorry.
Well, it was, I mean, one of the things I wanted to get to as we talk about your book is your, a 40,000 foot level view. And I'm seeing this as an example of that. So
Yeah.
I can't quite remember what my second question was, but
No,
I
no,
think
neither can I.
it's all part and parcel of this amazing collection of experience and talent coming together on your own in a way that you can help brands that I think the big holding companies are falling short on in a major way. I mean, maybe you don't
Yeah.
agree with me on that.
No, I totally agree with you. I think the thing for us and for everybody else in a similar situation is whether or not it actually gets proper traction and works at scale, or whether it doesn't. It may not. Um, Hopefully, it will for all of us that are going out and trying these new things. Because you're right in terms of what clients are getting. Um, Now, it's interesting. Do we blame the holding companies for that? I mean, they're cutting
Well,
back, as you say,
why not?
they are ageist. Well, yeah, absolutely. They're ageist. They are actually not that orientated towards creative and quality of
No,
creative output anymore.
I agree.
I remember about 3 years ago, it wasn't Maurice Levy, it was Arthur at Publicis. Uh, and I think he was quite honest. I think it was one of their annual reports. And he said, our creative agencies are no longer accretive to the business, i.e., they're not adding any value. And the truth is, with all of those guys, they're right. As huge combines, what they essentially have to do is mirror what clients are paying them for. And what clients are
Hmm.
paying them for, especially in the Publicis case now increasingly, is well put together systems and delivery and AI, which I'm sure we'll come on to, about
Yep.
how you deliver at scale creative product, which is often completely reformatted, targeted, etc., automatically. Obviously, there's a great deal of skill in putting those systems together, but they're mirroring in many senses what clients want from them, which has changed. Now, in the process, their margins, have clearly got tougher and tougher, especially on the creative agency side, because clients are not willing to pay as much for big brand work anymore. It's as simple as that. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
it's been outlined in detail, hasn't it, by, is it Michael Farmer on Madison Avenue manslaughter?
I'm familiar with, yes. I haven't read it, but I know what you're talking about.
It is a great book, but he absolutely goes through what it means. And it's something like in the last 15 years, creative teams, I think they're asked to do 2.5 to 3 times the workload per year for the same or less money. And it's just a product
Right.
of clients going, advertising for the brand isn't as important for me anymore. I have a myriad of other channels to use. Therefore, I'm not allocating as much to it. So, you can see where it's all come from. Now, the issue is by companies like ours at Supertalent reformatting ourselves, going, right, we're getting rid of the costly layers, therefore costs to client for really top-end creative and strategic product are a lot lower. Will clients latch onto that and go, right, I can get that from there, and then I can automate it over here? Because ultimately, that's
Well,
what they're going to do.
Well, Charles, I think maybe a modified version of that question is how many clients will go for that? Not will they go for that? I think there will be the brand savvy clients who understand the importance and value of brand will see the value that you're offering. It's just how many of them will do that. I mean, I don't,
Yeah, no,
that's
absolutely. And to do that takes creatively confident clients. So they've got to feel
absolutely.
that they can both, and this is an interesting age point. They've got to feel that they can deal with people of your age, my age, confidently, and that they
Hmm.
have in their own judgment. They feel pretty damn confident in that. And you and I know that a lot of client groups don't necessarily have that. Sometimes you come across them and go, wow, you know your stuff and you believe in yourself. Other times it's not the
And
case. So
no,
I think it
and
is very interesting.
I
Sorry,
was
Han.
just gonna say that the tendency is that the clients are going to be roughly half the age of some of these independence organizations that you represent.
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean,
And
I know of two of them here in the States. One personally, one is called Ghost, and
right.
they are deliberately anonymous. There are three partners that are deliberately anonymous because
Yeah.
they want to do exactly what you're talking about, which is focus on the work
Yeah.
and not our egos. So I can't
Yeah.
reveal who they are, but they call themselves Ghost. And the other
Well,
one,
it's a
I
good
haven't,
name for a company that operates that
yes,
way.
yes, and the other one I haven't had a chance to talk. I'm trying to get someone from from their
Yeah.
organization to come on the podcast. They're called Geezers.
Yes. I've seen their website and I read their launch stuff. I quite like that. Geezers.
Yeah,
Although it
yeah. So
does
they're
rather
just
bracket
they're
them
owning it. They're owning it.
as they're owning age.
Exactly, and that's as
Good
a
luck to them.
benefit.
Yeah.
Exactly. So let's use that as a segue into your book because we had you on just about the time you came back from overseas. You said you were there. You came back to the UK about 4.5 years ago. And that's about when
Yeah.
we started our podcast. So maybe a year into our podcast, we reached out to you after seeing your Chaz's 100 Things. Uh, was it a blog? Was it a blog that you had written, or was it just a single post? I forget what it was.
It was a single post that then went viral and
Right.
got I think about a couple of hundred reposts. Walk, the World Advertising Research Group, put it on their website. BBH Labs did. Loads of magazines picked up on it. I think I had the luck of the draw. The upside of COVID when I actually put it together and got it out there was that people were stuck at home, desperate for stuff to read, and even the stuff I wrote, Howard, seemed to go down extraordinarily well.
I think Henry and I
Um,
turned your posts into 2 or 3 episodes. There was so much to go
oh,
with. And then I think
you milked
we
it
finally
well,
reached
Howard.
out to you.
That,
Yes,
that's great. No,
exactly.
it was good stuff. So it started
Well,
out
because
that way, and I was about to leave BBH, and I think the team worked out that I wasn't doing much in the way of management or strategy, and that I was probably just sitting at home pottering about because it was COVID and going for a run every day. And they spotted this and they bullied me into it. They said, Chaz, you've got to leave us with something. And I said, well, what do you want, a tombstone? They said, you've got to leave us with something for future generations. And I kind of went, future generations don't care. But they kept going. And in the end, I wrote this.
And so now you're turning it into a good old fashioned book. So for those of us who like to have something in our hands,
Yeah,
and I'm going to get a copy of it, um, it's going to be published later this month, available on Amazon, and it's called
that's right.
it's the same title, Chaz's 100 Things a Planner Should Know. And
Exactly that.
the benefit is now because of your partnership with was it George? Is that his name? George? What's his
No, Martin Goldman.
Martin? Yes, Martin is your
He was
is
from BBH as well. He's a highly awarded art director, but he's also a fine artist and a cartoonist. He's a man of many talents, our Martin. And
well,
he
the combination of your insights and his art make for a wonderful and charming book. So let's make this segue and talk about the book, which is coming out very shortly.
sure.
The previous episodes that Henry and I did, grabbing onto our favorites of your 100 posts before we invited you on to talk about them. I don't want to repeat that. There are there's a ton of wisdom in this book, and maybe you have your favorites. So that's where I want to start. Of the 100 points that you make, and I'm going to guess that this is an accumulation of an entire career, and
That's right.
it probably took you some time to make this list, or did it all spill out in a few days? How did it actually happen?
It took 3 days and
Okay,
35 years, Howard.
exactly. Well, that's the key
It
point.
was in my
That's the
head, and
key
I
point.
thought when I started writing it, I started to enjoy it. I thought, let me and another. It's in English for and another thing. Kind of angry old guy keeps writing. I thought, yeah, we can write some more here, and it just poured out. So it was very short.
Okay, I'm going to guess it took Martin a little bit longer to draw his individual cartoons to match your wisdom.
I think it probably did. Give it his credit. He approached me and said, "Look, Chaz, you should get this out as a book. I mean, you should. I'll do the cartoons." And I said, "Well, yeah, okay, that's great, Martin, but you don't have to do one for every point." And he went, "No, I've already done 50, so I'll just do the other 50 then." It's just like, okay. Like I think
Oh,
I had to do it then.
okay. So here's 2 questions, and I'm sure you've
Yeah.
been asked the first one, many times. What are your favorite 2 or 3 points of the 100?
Okay. I think a very practical one is just number 3, which is just if you're a strategist in an agency, get out of the office, because if you're not out in the world bringing bits of the world back, I'm not sure what your role really is. I think the danger for planners and agencies and account people, this is terrible, but agencies in general don't help because they go, the planner will write the deck and the planner will write the brief. And then the planner needs to be in every meeting. And what has happened is that they've become sort of PowerPoint jockeys too often, very smart PowerPoint jockeys, churning through research, which is all good stuff, but they haven't necessarily gone out as much as they used to and actually met the people in their homes or spent a day shopping, or it is in a kind of requires a degree of what's the acting thing? It's method acting, isn't it? You've got to go and live with people. You've got to go and understand what's going on. And too often planners aren't given the time to do that. And I think they've almost got to force it. And the other downside of that, I think, has happened to agencies, is that the account man's role, which I've always believed is absolutely central, gets less. Because all of a sudden, account people go, I can't talk strategy. It's that we need the planner here. You go, well, hang on a sec. You're meant to be leading this account. You're the officer class. Us lot of the peasants, we're the difficult ranks just doing stuff. You're meant to be facing into the client, being able to discuss these things. But that role has unfortunately become less over time. So Get Out of the Office is one of my favorites. Another
Number
one
two.
that I really, yeah, I got a few, you know. Where is it? Where is it? Oh yeah. This is for people when they actually stop being a young creative person, is when it's number 81. When you make it to the top, do not rewrite the creative brief. And you see this time and again in agency, somebody goes, oh, I've got to rewrite the creative brief. Why?
Now,
Well,
let
I'm
me
now
let me
head
ask
of
you.
planning. Well, believe me.
Let me interrupt you, Charles. When you say rewrite the creative brief, you mean the template?
The template. The template always gets
Yep.
tweaked. And I'm sorry, you may disagree with me on this one,
No,
Hal, but I always just go, no, it doesn't matter. They're all roughly the same. I've seen
me
hundreds
too.
of them. They're all roughly the
I
same.
agree with you.
But what goes into it, it's two things. It's what goes into
Exactly.
it, and it's the conversations you have around it. And it's mainly the conversations. If you know your stuff and you're bringing stuff back to you're thinking it through, you should be talking to your creative people and your account people, and your clients about what you're learning and where the direction is going to be broadly. You know, before it gets even put into a template for a brief, it's what goes into the brief and it's the conversations. So that's another favorite of mine. I think maybe the third favorite is one that Dave Trott liked actually, and it was this notion that when you're young, it's about either end of your career. When you're young, you're very good at the zeitgeist. You instinctively know what's going on. You're good at street culture, but you are utterly hopeless at the big picture. And then when you're our age, you're
Yep.
really quite good at the big picture, but you literally have no idea what's cool or not. In fact, you are the definition of uncool, but that's fine. You've just got to understand where you are on that spectrum and maximize it. So if you're young, ask for help on the big picture thinking. You're probably not up to speed with marketing plans, how it all works, but you are a lot more up to speed on other stuff that other people aren't. And likewise, don't try to be the cool dude when you are well past being that. You're the one now that kind of structures and orders it. You have the helicopter view. They don't.
I couldn't agree more. And one of the things that I've learned as an instructor is in teaching, especially marketers, the art and science of writing a brief, is that I'm doing far less actual discussion about what's happening in what's the best advertising today and what's the hottest agency, and more about the essentials of what a brief is. And I reduced it to three
Yeah.
key ingredients, and I'd be curious to hear your reaction to this. I think the key ingredients of every brief are: one, clarity; two, inspiration; three, empathy. If your brief doesn't contain those three elements, it's probably going to be a failure. So that's
Yeah.
really, as an instructor, I'm not sharing what's the hottest new technique, the AI technique or the video technique or the creative angle to, that's winning awards. I'm talking about how to communicate to your creatives what they need to do their best jobs. So
Yeah.
I think this is part and parcel of what you're saying. Is we get older, it's about big picture stuff. I couldn't agree with you more. So now let me change the focus. You've identified three of your favorite
Yeah.
things. You've had a few years to think about where strategy is, where brand is, where creative is.
Yeah.
How are we doing? What's your sense of where we are today as an industry?
Not tremendously well, Howard. Not tremendously well. We're in one of those kind of phases when industries change, that chaos reigns and people have a million theories and try new things. But I think a lot of people are feeling a bit like, I don't know, typesetters and the old printing presses that all of a sudden went, hang on a sec, what do you mean you can do this automatically? But I'm a highly skilled person. I get paid a lot of money to typeset daily paper. So I think, you know, some skills are going, others will be retained. I mean, I think it's absolutely fascinating. I don't think we're doing well creatively. There's been a slight uptick recently in the UK, but most of the UK stuff, UK advertising when I started out was of a very good standard. It was also part of the day-to-day culture, you know, outside of advertising. It was an interesting thing for people to chat about in the 80s and the 90s. And frankly, in the main, it's not anymore. It's quite pedestrian. It almost too often holds up a mirror to the audience and tries to do the empathy thing just by showing them a slightly polished up version of themselves. It doesn't leave enough for consumers themselves to complete. So they always complete the circle as opposed to just going, you know, you work out the joke or you work out, which people enjoy. It gives them a game. We all
Exactly.
want a bit of engagement in what we're, you know, watching in between the programs that we've actually tuned in for. So I don't think we're doing brilliantly. I think it's understandable given the pressures on the industry, given the fact that clients aren't as willing to pay agencies in their current structure and format as much as they were. Because if you're a client, you're sitting there, you've got a big brand. In, you know, 1990 or whatever, let's say 30 years ago, your biggest lever probably was the TV ad. Simple as that. It was the big thing. That was the thing you were going to stick a lot of money into. And you were going to make sure it was both cut through and right, could really do something for you. Now, clients will be going, I'm not sure they're thinking that. I'm sure they're not actually. They've got a million levers to pull, and one of them is advertising. And that's what's happened to us. Now, the key thing is, are those same clients still thinking enough about how they position their brand and the story they want to tell around it, and then how they want to express that story creatively? Because you can do that story in a million different ways. It doesn't have to be through an ad. You know, we all know that. The issue is without traditional agencies and senior creative and planning people to help them, will they be thinking enough about that? Because brands still need a North Star. They still need a sense of direction, and they still need a gripping story, as we all know. People want some excitement. They want something to be interesting. Now, how one of the points here, I wrote down some points that were about the future, and one of them was advertising in its current form may well be a declining force, but brands and creativity won't be. So you just got to find or know, try and find where your future lies in that mix. A lot of us wanted to join this industry because it was creative. It was a way of getting paid to do something that was intrinsically interesting. That has maybe declined in the pure advertising sense. But how can it then be applied in a non-advertising brand sense? I think that's going to be kind of interesting. And that's where we're going to have to go, because, you know, most stuff will be automated. I mean, AI is going to rip through the industry. And there's no point anybody going, it's not going to. I mean, I think another point in here is, you know, we can't, you know, don't whinge about where the world's going. You know, capitalism is utterly heartless. It doesn't care about our craft skills, Hal. It just uses, it reaches out for whatever it thinks is most effective. So the future is interesting. I don't think we quite know what it is, but I mean, what is the agency of the future? What are your thoughts? And what does the agency, what skills does the brand agency of the future contain, Howard? That's an interesting thing to ponder.
Well, it is. And I've been away from the agency world for so long that because I've been teaching,
Yeah,
I don't have any insights. Although
right.
I'm curious to dive a little deeper into your comment. You said you think advertising, branding is important, but advertising may not be. Well, if not advertising, especially for those who want to pursue the industry because they love creativity, if not
Yeah.
advertising, what?
Well, I mean, that's a very good question. I'm not saying that advertising will go altogether. It won't. It will very much still be there. But I don't think it will necessarily always be the biggest lever and the
Mm,
central point.
right.
Um, I mean, I don't buy. Have you seen? Was it Professor Scott Galloway's rant about brands? I mean, he's head of marketing. He's professor of marketing at NYU, isn't he? Have you
Yeah, I
seen?
mean, the rant that I heard is that he said that there is no company, there's no major brand that built its brand on advertising. And he was essentially blown up for making such a ridiculous comment because all kinds of people countered his argument. Now, is that the one you're referring to, or is there something else that he said that
Yeah,
was?
I think his exact things was that he felt that, well, it was more fundamental. His accusation was because we all have access to near perfect information and reviews, brands will matter less and less. That's what the rant I heard,
Okay, well,
which is interesting.
I reject the premise because
Yeah,
we don't have access to imperfect information. Nobody does.
and
I mean, I think
I sense
that's,
he lives in his own world. He's making the mistake of thinking every other consumer is a multimillionaire like him,
and
which just isn't true.
we call that curse of knowledge. You believe that everybody knows what you know, and therefore you can speak from a position of pure knowledge. I kind of reject
But
that principle, but
yeah, but
he's got a great platform, and so he can make these comments, and if someone disagrees with him, he just moves on.
totally. I think we both agree he's not right. The point though about PR is interesting because I would go. The problem is that PR at the moment is not highly strategic or highly creative, and it doesn't think that way. But actually, if you look at the way trends start, it is very PR driven. It's very celebrity driven. It's very
Hmm.
product innovation. So I think you could argue that the future of the industry will contain a strong element of PR at the heart of it, along with a strong element of social and traditional brand thinking, strategy, and creative as well. Because, I mean, the truth is, I think he's right, actually. Most brands start, it's the strength of their product and their PR that gets them going. And then traditional advertising has to lift them and actually keep building on that to ensure, future demand, basically. And for
Well,
anybody who hasn't read it, has James Herman's book. Have you read James Herman's book?
no, I haven't.
He's a strategist out of New Zealand. He's written a great book, and it's just called Future Demand. A fairly dry title, but he's written it for small and medium-sized business owners and agency people. It uses a lot of the Byron chart work, a lot of the Binet and Field data as well to show the importance of post-launch. You have to keep building the brand.
Hmm. Uh, One of the things that comes to mind when you say this about PR, it reminds me of the fact that in our industry, too few people, or I should say too many people, simply don't have any sense of the history of brands. They can only
Yeah,
think back 2 or 3 years, 5 minutes ago. I've had personal experience with this. So the knowledge of how a brand has established itself, built its foundations on PR, I think is lost on people. They only know what the most recent advertising campaign has done, and
yeah,
sometimes not even that.
true, true.
Any
But I
thoughts
mean,
on
isn't
that?
that the way things are going? This is something I wanted to talk to you about, Pat, because there's a lot of data out there, an awful lot, an overwhelming. The IPA here in the UK and people over in America probably heard of the IPA Effectiveness Awards.
Yes.
They
Yes.
are very good at putting out great stuff about the importance of long-term brand building. There's masses of data. The question in my mind is, are companies actually picking up on that and doing it? So we have all the evidence, but not much action. Maybe certainly not this side of the pond in terms of people going, yeah, I really do need to invest in that. Whether that's traditional advertising, whether it's design, whether it's events, whatever it is, I should invest in that. It doesn't feel like they are. And I wonder whether it's this short termism is almost endemic to modern societies. I mean, look at politics. Musk was in the White
I
House last week. Now he's haranguing it from the outside this week. I mean, it's just, hang on a second. I'm not surprised people's attention spans of that.
oh
Everything's gone. It's
I read a comment from some political prognosticator who said that Trump policy ideas have a half-life of 48 hours.
Exactly. It's like nuclear
because
decay. That's brilliant.
yeah, because what he opens his mouth and then he changes his mind. So I think that's endemic of what's going on today. I couldn't agree with you more when you say that short-termism um, is 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 not helping brands. It's hurting brands. We can't get past this the long-term requirements that brand needs to truly build. We have lots of examples of great brands that have done this, but
Yep. But maybe,
my experience in the training that I do is that marketers are intimidated by the vast quantities of data and they don't know what to do with it. They can't get a handle on it.
but there was also that a lot of marketing departments now seem to be geared around pumping out something for every single channel in existence.
Yes, yes, exactly.
And you
They
go,
they
I'm not
need
sure that's, the notion of focus, the notion of long term. I don't know. Maybe the industry will need to crash and burn for a bit. I'm on the marketing side. And actually, before people go, oh, hang on a sec, it's not working. It's not working because we cannot survive by tactical, sales orientated, socially delivered work forever. And look, everything is going down. Maybe that's the point because I think people may need to go through that pain before they realize that all the shiny new things don't necessarily deliver. My
well,
old,
I
sorry, Alan.
no, go ahead. You're old what? You're old who?
My old boss, Nigel Bogle, who was brilliant at coming up with ideas about 20 years ahead. I remember in the 90s was talking about accelerated culture. And I think it's just got even faster. And we used to do a lot of work in Japan. And at that stage in the late 90s in Japan, it was almost doubly accelerated culture. So rock bands and pop bands who came onto the scene would normally burst onto the scene, and quite often they'd launch two albums at the same time, two sets of 12 to 15 songs at the same time, because they knew their half-life was about a year to 6 months.
Hmm.
And then they'd get short and then they'd be out of fashion again. It was that quick. Now that's 25 years ago. But
Right.
it's so you kind of go, that's super interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm not entirely plugged into absolutely everything. I go on to LinkedIn and I'm reading some of the trades. So I'm not going to claim that I
yeah,
have this deep knowledge. But when you said that maybe the industry or large chunks of the industry need to crash and burn so that we can figure out what's going to come in its place, I haven't heard
yeah.
anybody say those words out loud. You're the first person I've heard say those words out loud, which I think is fascinating. Like
Nobody
I said,
wants to.
maybe others have said things like that, but I haven't heard that. Um, are you being facetious? Are you being
I'm just
what?
being honest. I'm just
Okay,
being, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, Howard, any more than anybody else. But
true,
we, like all people who have a craft skill that they enjoy hugely, want it to carry on forever, but it doesn't.
sure. No, no,
Um, so, there's too many people just going back to LinkedIn, looking looking backwards, Howard, going, reposting ads from years ago. And you go, well, okay, that's great. I thought that was brilliant then as well. But it's not now, and it's not the
right.
future.
I
And maybe our skills need to evolve or change, or it, I think there will be a crash. It's sorry, let's be honest. It is crashing. That
yes,
we can't deny this.
no,
It's gone. Agency brands are being folded into each other, one after another. Holding companies are just going to become big AI-driven machines. We all know that. The question is, will there still be room at the top end of the market for genuine leadership ideas for great brands or not? That's the thing.
I think the answer is obviously yes.
I hope so.
If capitalism has any um, energy left, and I think it does,
No, it does.
creative destruction will come to the fore and do what it's always done. I posted an article on LinkedIn not long ago written by a woman whose name I can't remember right now, but the title of the article was The Gutenberg Moment. And her
Yeah.
argument is essentially that ever since the invention of the Gutenberg press, that invention has essentially triggered everything that's come since. And there's always going to be this moment, and AI is our Gutenberg moment. We don't
Yeah,
need
that's a good point.
monks. We don't need monks who can hand transcribe a Bible because we have something to replace it. So there's going to be a vast change in the who's employed and what jobs exist and how the creative world will produce what it produces because of AI. And the ones who are complaining the most about it are the ones who probably should be finding other lines of work. And the ones who are embracing it are the ones who are going to figure out what comes next. That's just the way it's always been. Now, I can
Yeah,
say
I
this
guess
with
so.
confidence. I can say this without any, concerns because I'm not a practicing creative anymore. I'm an educator
Yeah.
and I'm an observer. And
But you are educating people for the future, as it were, Howard.
well, we hope we're
We're
doing
going to
that.
get there,
Yes.
sailing out into the world,
Well,
shouldering
that's
vast amounts of student debt, Howard.
no pressure, right? No pressure.
No pressure.
Well,
Um,
let
I,
me ask you this.
I was
I
just,
think you've made a salient point that if it hasn't done so yet, our industry is crashing and we need to figure out what comes next, who and how are we going to pick up the pieces.
yeah,
Let's
and how the
what,
industry will be structured. There was,
yeah.
uh,
What do
are
you
you a fan?
think?
Are you a fan of Mad Max movies, Howard?
I have watched two or three of them. Yes, it's been a while, but I know what you're talking about.
The very worst of them. I mean, I love them, but there was one that was a particular low point called Beyond Thunderdrome, and it featured Tina Turner. Actually, she was
Yeah,
kind
that
of
actually I do remember
it
that
was
one.
it,
Yes.
it was tremendously bad compared to the others. But in that character, in there was a gladiatorial figure called this huge giant called Master Blaster, and
Yes, I remember.
what is revealed is that Master, the tiny dwarf, is on the shoulders of a giant, and basically the
That's right.
giant is a symptom. It's a giant, but with the brain of a or the development of a child, but it's still a giant. And Blaster is his master, who tells him what to do. And maybe that's what's going to happen. That there is the machine, the Blaster, and then there will be a few people creating what that machine is going to blast out. But there's not going to be the ranks of other people doing it. You see what I mean? The analogy, probably a bit of a crude
Yes.
analogy.
I like the analogy. It's there's the alternate to that is what I've also read recently, and that is that there's evidence that AI is not only teaching itself but learning to turn off instructions to stop what it's doing when it's not good. That's kind of
Well,
scary. If I've
that's uh,
summarized it correctly, yeah.
that's
So let me.
exceptionally scary.
I
But I mean,
know.
just on the industry development, I was trying to think. I mean, what one of the parallels I was thinking about the other day was the fashion industry. Remember when there was a middle to the fashion industry, Howard? When Levi's
You'll
was a
have
big
to.
brand.
Well, yes, I do remember
Yeah,
that.
and who were
Yeah.
the other brands in the middle at that, 20, 30 years ago? There were lots of mid-priced, good quality clothing outlets. Yeah, clothing brands.
Yes. You mean like
Now what is it?
Gap and
Gap.
Old Navy
Oh,
and
those are the ones I've forgotten. I've forgotten their names already. You see, I'm moving on,
yeah,
Howard. Moving on.
J. Crew.
Um, J. Crew, all of that mid-range stuff.
Hmm.
Dockers. Anyway, huge fan.
Exactly.
Where's the middle gone, Howard? It doesn't exist anymore.
Well, it's still there. I just think it's so stale that it's lost favor.
But the industry is restructured. It's
Yeah,
a top end, high fashion, luxury, made in Paris. Everything else, cheap, quite often great design, like Zara, because
right,
they just copy the top, made in Bangladesh. Zara is
right.
actually
I
made in
mean,
part of Bangladesh.
today
But
you can
you get the point that the middle, which used to be big, has been hollowed out, and there is just that bit, and then everything else, which kind of follows and tones that down, but just mass produces it. And I wonder if
right.
we're going to end up like that.
Well, that's what Amazon is doing. Amazon is inviting third-party sales to sell their products on Amazon, and then the best of it, Amazon copies and calls it its Amazon Basic.
Oh, right.
That's
Okay.
that's one of the things that's being done. I don't know if other brands are doing that, but Amazon has awakened to this opportunity to simply copy and sell at a cheaper
Yeah.
price very basic products, T-shirts,
just
mops.
if we bring it back to our world, I mean, I think some agencies will survive. I think, you know, if you're at the top end in your Widens or your Mother or your BBH or Lucky Generals here or Goodby in San Francisco, you will survive because you're doing the bit at the top. But the holding companies, they're just going to be a Zara equivalent. They're going to be
Isn't
machines. That's the nature of the beast.
Charles, isn't that just what a bell curve is?
Yeah, I guess so. But it means that
Yeah.
all the middle agencies, the middle ranking ones, the ones that occasionally do a good piece of work that everybody likes, but actually in the main, they're just the churners. It's not going to be there anymore.
Right.
Everybody goes, God,
Exactly.
agency groups, you know, they can't, they don't support their own brands. Well, it's because, you know, Y&R or Burnett's, well, they're just not important as brands anymore. I don't blame them for having merged them all. You and I can remember their distinction when they were years ago. They had different points
Yeah.
of view. They
Right.
stopped having different
Right.
points of view and approaches a while back.
Yes, I agree.
They've defeated themselves, so they don't deserve to live. They can all go.
Well,
I think the holding companies have
Charles,
done the right thing. Why should they do anything else with these things?
Charles,
There's
let's
no
try
point
to end on a notice. Let's try to end on a note of sunshine. Let's come back to your book.
That is
And
sunshine. It's creative destruction, Howard. Creative destruction.
I know that. But I want to help you sell books. I want to help you sell books.
Excellent.
So,
Excellent. Remember, just the price of a beer in a central London pub. That's all it costs.
right. And I'm an American, so I'm looking for the happy ending, right? I can't help it. It's in my genes. So
but I'm not sure we've fought with the giant yet. I don't think we've fought the enemy enough yet. We need to rant more.
We could come back for another episode. We could come back for another episode and go against the enemy within or without or wherever.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, one of the things that Henry and I like to do is we bring in young talent, you know, either still in school meaning like a portfolio school, or they're still in college, or they've recently graduated and they're just starting their career. So we like to get a sense of how does the education compare to the real world? And most of them have had internships. So how do you see your book fitting in as a way to provide young, aspiring, or new strategists with a crutch, an assistant, an aid for their career? What would you say to young strategists?
Well, I have to say, Howard, it'll solve all their problems almost immediately. I mean,
That's what
it
I
is the
wanted you to say.
cure-all pill. It's just there. Now, on a more on a more serious note, I think the brutal truth is that everybody has to make their own mistakes and learn their own stuff. But it's quite helpful sometimes to have a few shortcuts and to have a bit of stimulus. And the book, as per the original list, is designed to dip in and out of. You don't have to read it in order. It's like a series of illustrated playing cards that give you a little bit of inspiration, a sort of caffeination for the mind about things you could think of, things you should consider on a particular job you're doing. So I hope it acts in that way. A little bit of caffeination for the mind, a bit of a pick-me-up, also to make you smile occasionally, because I think that's kind of important. So hopefully it will help people. I've received, because people reach out quite often from all over the place, quite a few from Southeast Asia and South Asia and India. And young planners have said, I've printed out all of the 100, and in my cubicle, I posted them around the wall of the cubicle so that I can look up and pick one, which I think was so sweet. It's so nice if people get something out of it. So hopefully they will, Alan.
Well said, Charles. So Charles Wigley, author of the upcoming Chaz's 100 Things a Planner Should Know. It's wonderful to see you again. Thank you for joining me on the Brief Brothers.
And thank you, Howard. It's been great fun.
Good stuff, Henry.
Good stuff, Howard.
He's Henry Gomez.
He's Howard Eibach. Together, we're the Brief Brothers. Till next time, bye-bye.